Chapter 61. Black Flames. Not with bodies, not with feet, but with that part of the self that tips when the world stops pretending it is solid. The platform, the trees, the witchlights, all slid away as if they were grease on a pane, and underneath was the old window I had always known was there. The black salt drank the last lights down to a bruise, and the circle became a mouth. Hexa was a cat beside me because that was the shape she liked best. Sleek, black as a shadow's shadow, eyes traced with hexagonal irises that spun like lenses calibrating in a storm. Child of Ian was the opposite of a shape, a boy-sized silhouette whose edges refused to agree with each other. When I looked too long he became a hole punched through the night, and when I looked away he was a boy again, grinning with far too many teeth for his small face. We were three in an absence of place, balanced on the lip of the circle while the world thinned to a thought. Then other outlines joined us, ember blue sketches of people with the thickness of distance about them. Umbran elders and hunters and children slid into the dark like swimmers entering the sea they had been born beside. Their witchlights did not follow, instead, each person brought a thin wash of foxfire that crawled across their skin where veins would be, mapping old rivers in living maps. They took hands without touching, and the black salt sang the way iron sings when it is about to remember being ore. Let it spread, the elder's voice said, not with sound but with the authority of a line you either step across or don't. I opened my right palm over the circle and breathed. Just enough, just the friendly hunger, and let void that licks kiss the ethereal grains. It went like electricity when it found the pattern it had been waiting for. A dark glimmer ran through the salt lines, and where it passed, the thin shell of this forest reality peeled back with a soft hiss. The lick is mild when I ask it to be. It is a tongue, not a jaw. It polished the surface of the world until it was thin enough to see the picture beneath, and what lay beneath was not the present. We fell into a dance that was older than standing. They moved first, the Umbran, knees bending with the inevitability of tide, shoulders rolling like hill lines learning to sag under rain. I smelled the tree sap from the elder's cup in my mouth again. It had a bitter undernote now, the iron of old memory stirred. Saravern cut the air with the obsidian hem of her mantle and the black threw back a color I did not have a word for. Hex's tail ticked, the child laughed and ran his palm along my ribs as if drumming on a hollow log. Gravity was suggestion only, I bled into the rhythm and bled back. And the abyss didn't mind which way we were pointed. A circle. A finger tapped the line, and tiny figures walked it, stick people with seed bright centers. This is how it was, Tareth murmured. One life becomes dust, the dust becomes rain, the rain becomes bread, and a breath returns in a new cradle. Memory fades at the edges but the center learns. A long, slow schooling. The circle brightened with each pass. In it you could see a village rise and fall, knowledge staining the loop a little darker each time. Stone knives becoming bronze, bronze to iron, stories refining into laws, laws into mercy. It was tangible. I could literally watch understanding accumulate like patina. Then another hand, thin as a twig, dragged a second line across the circle. Not a neat loop, but a straight-edged frame that pinned the circle at 4 points. The dots hit the frame and some of them stuck. They didn't continue. They hung there like insects in amber, their seed-bright centers siphoned by thin, pale threads that ran from the frame into a larger shape above the glass, a net of boxes and corridors. Familiar lines. Shop fronts. Queues. Windows that sold blessings. The Nexus, Celery said. A machine that catches the returning and spends them. It does not erase, no. It diverts. It says, wait before you go back, we have work for you. Another picture formed, overlaid on the first, a little wooden mill over a stream, its wheel spun by lazily moving water. Then, with the same stark economy, they grafted a turbine onto it, steel vanes, triple-bladed, hammering the water into speed it had not predicted. Entropy, Tareth said, pointing to the stream. Everything runs down. Heat leaves the stone. The sparrow flies, tires, sleeps. The great mountain crumbles and becomes sand. This is not evil. It is the law that makes room. Temporary makes meaning. And this, Celery continued, tapping the turbine, forces the flow to do extra work before it rests. The Nexus takes what would become quiet and turns it, grinds it, lights up palaces that never sleep. The ones who keep it spinning call themselves gods. They were once our sisters and brothers. They made what they needed to never stop. They did not paint the gods as horned monsters. They showed hands. Wires going into flesh. Eyes that refused to close. The mill wheel in the turbine became a loom, and on the loom two threads fought, one soft and dark, wanting to fall, to drape, the other stiff and bright, tension to a scream. The weave held because both existed, But every time the dark thread relaxed, the bright one tightened harder and stole the slack. Hex's tail flicked once, approving the diagram. "Correct enough," she said in my skull. "The makers learn to borrow against the end of all things. Call it an overdraft. The interest compounds." Celery rubbed away a corner of the salt and drew a single figure in the empty patch, larger than the stick people, seed bright core throbbing like a little sun. She ringed it with tiny marks, favors, points, titles, buffs. Then she drew an arrow from the seed into the turbine, and little sparks ran along the arrow into the machine that hung over the circle. "They take from us," she said simply. "From you. From every volunteer and every captive. From every raider who is told that glory lies beyond the next door and the next." "And reincarnation?" I pressed. "You said truncated. How?" "The frame lets some through," Tareth said, tapping the unpinned arcs of the circle. "But it reroutes many into the halls of matchmaking as fuel to run this nexus. Those caught most tightly do not return at all. They are burned away, when they finally go, even memory erased not by water but by knives." He erased half the little stick people with his bomb. "The ones who remain pale, recycled shells. The circle is still completed but it chokes on empty fuel." Tareth didn't bother with poetry. He pressed his palm across half the loop and wiped the little figures away. Where his hand passed, the salt smeared to gray. "See it plain," he said. "When the frame bites, the return is interrupted. Those caught become fuel." He dotted the empty space he'd made with new marks, tiny squares that lit and dimmed with a regular, ugly pulse. "They are not destroyed immediately. They are cycled," Celery added. "Run through tasks. Raids. Spectacles. Their will is skimmed, their choices harvested. The halls pay them in trinkets and boons, yes. But the work they do feeds the machines above the frame. The palaces of the gods run on this. The lights in their sky are paid for with delay and forgetting." Hex's voice was steady. "Conservation of energy is a tyrant unless you cheat. The Nexus is a neat cheat in that way." Celery drew a line from one of the pulsing squares to a larger glyph above, something like a keep. The line brightened along its length, the keep flared. "Palace," she said. "Domain. God. Call it whatever you like. It drinks." "And the ones you erased?" I asked, because I refused to let metaphor do all the labor. "Gone?" "Some go on," Tareth said. He tapped the portion of the circle untouched by the frame. "Some slip through while the gods are distracted. Those can return by the old road, slow, clean, heavy with succor for the next life. But many," he gestured to the gray smear, "do not. They are shaved, thinned, sent back without a center. They live small lives and make easy choices and are skimmed again. Recycled until the seed goes pale and each year fewer and fewer slip through." He didn't need to embellish. I had seen eyes like that. People who moved by habit and never seemed to leave a dent in the world. "And the ones who never return?" I asked. Celery's mouth went tight. "They become structure. Partitions in a god's mind. Armatures for a domain. The bright ones get built into blades, the obedient ones become stairs." The elder lifted her hand again and smoothed the mess back into a circle, then drew a clean gap through the frame, an opening where the loop could pass without snagging. "This is what we want," she said. "To widen the parts that pass. To starve the turbine. Let the stream slow like it is meant to. Let endings end. Let beginnings begin. Entropy is not a monster to us, it is the room being made for the next song." She tilted her chin at me. "This is why you confuse us. You carry the taste of the river's end. Your being leaks it. We feel that in our teeth. And yet you walk with a machine in your skull and a third face that laughs at knives. You are a contradiction we hoped for and did not expect." The child of Yun rocked on his heels, delighted by this diagnosis. Hexa flicked her tail once, conceding the point. "I tried it in plain speech, for myself as much as them. The gods force the current to turn their wheel. The wheel powers their houses, and they've convinced everyone the light is worth the cost. The cost is that most of us don't get to finish being who we're meant to be before we're spent. Some get ground down to parts. You want the wheel to stall so the river finds its old bed again." Celery nodded. "Yes." Tareth's foxfire veins brightened, and his voice lost its ritual weight and became simply a man explaining something to a guest. "We do not die," he said. "Not yet. Not while the wheel is braked." He touched the salt where the turbine had bitten into the loop. "When this frame was thrown over the world, the return of breath to cradle ceased to be certain. Souls were intercepted, rerouted, spent. We learned that those of us who let go, who died in the old way, were too often taken into the machine. They were not cruelly destroyed, not always. They were used. Their center dimmed then vanished. Seravern's voice followed, level and practical. So we refused to feed it. We kept our elders. We slowed our breeding. We repaired our bodies instead of surrendering them. We became very careful with risk. We carry our lights and our homes because walls become nets. We are not afraid of death, Hex Wolf, we are unwilling to pay the gods' price for it. Hex's tail stirred against my ankle. They can be killed. They simply choose not to die under the Nexus jurisdiction. Celery dipped her chin. We were people before the frame. We remember gardens that did not hum with god logic. When the first of our kin were taken and used as little more than engines for someone else's victory, we learned. We made ourselves long-lived. We taught our children to travel lightly. We hid. And we wait, Tareth added. We wait for the loom to slacken. For the turbine to shudder. For the frame to crack. When it does, the wheel will run on its own again. Breath to cradle, dust to rain, memory to mercy. We will accept death then and return properly. I kept my questions simple. And until then? Until then, Seravern said, we live as witnesses and, when we can, as saboteurs. We pull pins the machine has placed in the world. We mislead its servants. We keep those who would have been taken from stepping onto the polished floors that lead only inward. She glanced at me, the obsidian hem of her mantle whispering against the salt. We ally with entropy. Not as worshippers, but as kin to the law that says all things finish. The dark U-shape, we named it tide before we had words for mathematics. It is not murder. It is the room inside which kindness makes sense. I looked from face to face. Then why the interest in me? The void, Celery said simply. It clings to you. It answers you. Among us, there is an old story that when the loom has been stretched too tight, one will come who can touch the tide without drowning and remind the world silence sounds. We always assumed such a one would be born of our line. You are not. Her mouth quirked, almost amused. If you are a sign, you are a surprising one. Dareth's gaze was frank. You are of a newborn race. Hexa filled the pause for me. They mean, a people whose culture grew inside the frame. Short-lived. Rapid breeding. Optimized for the machine's incentives. Humans as the Nexus prefers them. Seravern's eyes stayed on mine. And yet you carry an older grammar. Your core phrase. Your soul is, busy. You are three wearing one suit. That is not nature's work. I let out a slow breath. So what do you want from me? Dareth didn't make a ceremony of it. We want you to learn how to touch death and not be taken by it. Celery's foxfire veins brightened. And then teach us. Not the theater of it. The lever. The G. We're not asking for fireworks, Seravern said, voice low and even. We're asking for endings. The kind that stay ended so the wheel can turn again. Rip. How to press the blade where the weave is weakest. Cut the cord where it needs cutting. Dareth's mouth tightened. The gods call that corruption. It isn't. It's life finishing when it should. Out there, he jerked his chin toward the unseen halls, if you die inside their game, you don't move on. You get ground up to keep the lights on. I let that sit, the taste of it cold and metallic. So not a show. No grand gesture. Just the right doors closing, Seravern said. Clean. Final. And you think I can do that? We think you can learn, she answered. Touch it. Shape it. Draw the circle shut when it matters. I nodded once. End the false loop. Let the real one breathe. Even if you're right, I said, voice low, what do you actually expect me to do? They behave like gods. Maybe they aren't, maybe they're just ascended, but they swat worlds. I'm one man with a handful of mean tricks. The elder Tareth's mouth folded into something that might have been a smile in a gentler century. Good. Start with truth. Seravern tipped her chin at the black diagrams. They look limitless because you meet them where they wrote the rules. Celery pressed a fingertip into the salt, carving a thin groove that ran from the stick people loop to the sharp frame. The Nexus weave is a contract machine. Every miracle they perform has receipts, they've been leveling since their creation. Hex's voice brushed my inner ear, dry as flint. Compliance layers. Audit demons. If they violate them the other ascendants get a green light to dogpile them. It's not morality, it's competition. They are constantly maintaining their levels through weave-approved means. So they are bound, I said. By their own scaffolding. By fear of each other, Seravern corrected. And by the scaffolding's physics. The weave amplifies them, yes, but anchoring to it means accounting to it. Their power is alone against the river. Outside the current, it costs them. Dareth drew a second set of figures, taller, crowned with tangled hair like coat tendrils, and sketched thin threads from their crowns into puppet bodies below. Avatars. Meat suits, as the young would say. Taken, tuned. Most of what you fight is a person on the end of the wire. And the person? I asked. Augmented, Celery said softly. And drained. Their classes bloom like bruises. Until there is nothing but resistance and hate left in the soul. And then they feed the perfect coal to the Nexus. Dareth let the last shape fade and looked at me the way an old tree looks at a storm, measuring, not impressed, not afraid. Enough pictures. You asked what to do. We start with what can be done. Servern's voice came from my left, practical and dry. You need technique before revelation. Tricks before thunder. Celery stepped forward with a small pouch and a roll of dark cloth. Old arts first, she said. The weave devours, but we still mark our own. Black salt. She tapped the pouch. We give it only to those we might accept. A pinch after battle for those lost to the weave. And if you fall, it names the death as yours too. I weighed the pouch in my palm. The grains inside shifted like dry bones rattling at the bottom of a drum. Not heavy, not light, but undeniable. Hex's tail brushed my boot as if to remind me she approved. The child of Yin only grinned wider, his teeth catching the foxfire glow like small knives. I looked up at the three elders. And if I refuse? Servern's eyes narrowed, but her voice stayed even. Then you walk among us as a guest. You eat our food, you share our fire tonight. But you will not be counted. Your death will be theirs to claim, not yours. And if I take it? Celery pressed the pouch more firmly into my hand. Acceptance is not ceremony only. It is risk shared. You bear our salt, and our tears bear you. The circle hissed as the last of the grains dimmed to ash. The diagrams, the stick figures, the turbines, all gone as if they had never been. Only the faint taste of iron and rain lingered on my tongue. I tied the pouch to my belt. Then I'll carry it. The elder's foxfire veins dimmed to calm. Servern's mantle whispered as she turned away. Celery's mouth quirked, just enough to be mistaken for approval. Hex's voice brushed against the back of my teeth. You stepped across the line. No turning back now. The child of Yin clapped his two small hands once, delighted. Good, he whispered, though no air moved. Now we can begin to try and kill ourselves properly. The forest pressed in again, thick with shadow and witchlight. The night had teeth. But for the first time since stepping into this world, I did not feel alone in them. Chapter 62, Root Breaker. I stayed the night among them, though calling it sleep would have been generous. The Umbran did not welcome easily, and though I held the black salt, their eyes never softened. Children, as few as there were, gave me a wide berth. Hunters moved around me as if I were a snare they did not trust. Those who did not avoid me outright offered only the stiff grace of military acknowledgement, heads dipped with no affection. They lived like ghosts going without firelight, without music, without walls. Even their tents were temporary, woven from shadow wool and pinned with bone, silent as breath and vanishing at a whisper. The world around me didn't feel abandoned. It felt watching. Hex awoke me with her usual tick in the mind. A mental nudge, like a gear slipping teeth. We were lying near the perimeter, in a hollow under root and bark. I rolled up to my feet slowly, still acclimating to the way the Umbran slept without dreams. Something about the salt rites. Something about silence. The forest around us was pre-dawn still, caught in that thin moment before even birds remember how to sing. I moved quietly, stepping between the skeletal outlines of branches. And that was when I felt her pause. Audio signature, Hexa said. I froze. Nothing visible. But her tone had a hook in it. The kind that only came with threat. A tremor. Subtle. Barely perceptible. But in an instant, the entire camp changed. A runner passed me without sound, eyes narrowed, one hand lifted in signal. Then another. The quiet turned absolute. Bodies that had been curled in sleep moved like poured ink, flowing into formation. Children vanished into hollows. Elders took their staffs and stood at equidistant points, forming a perimeter before my mind could catch up. The Umbran weren't quiet because they were reverent. They were quiet because they had evolved it as a safety mechanism. Hex's eyes flashed in the dark, catching mine. It's not them. It's something coming through the woods we traversed to get here. Tareth appeared beside me, as if peeled from shadow. He knelt and touched the edge of a leaf slipped with blood. This trail is loud, he said quietly. The woods remembers it. I looked back over the path we'd carved through the forest. Broken branches. Patches of churned mud and dark stains where things had bled, or worse. Should I cover it? He shook his head once. Too late. It sees us now. The ground beneath us did not shake, but something deeper did. A tone, almost felt rather than heard. The Umbran hunters moved into position without order. They didn't need it. Celery appeared next. Her eyes met mine and held. "You are not the first to bring back echoes. But you are the first newborn to bring a threat. That means you're strong enough to run. Perhaps something more." I swallowed. "So what now?" She turned to the gathering circle of Umbran. "Now," she said, "we test whether you are a Umbran, or a wound." The race had begun and the first roar hit like a change in the weather. It did not sound like a throat. It sounded like stone under pressure, like a mountain being forced to remember that it was once molten. The air thickened in my lungs. Hexa flinched inside my head, claws raking the inside of my thoughts. "Contact acquired," she said. "Classification pending." That noise should not exist in an atmosphere this thin. Trees buckled behind us. Not just trunks snapping. Whole root webs tore free, soil lifting in waves. Something enormous crested the ridge we had just left and blotted out half the sky. I glanced back once and nearly lost my footing. It was not quite Godzilla, not quite anything I knew. My old world comparisons felt insulting beside it. Plates of stony armor climbed its spine like broken hills. Bioluminescent veins ran between the plates, pulsing in slow, furious rhythm. Each step sunk claws the length of oaks into the earth. Its head was a blunt wedge of bone and old scars, eyes set too deep, pupils a thin vertical slit of molten glass. It opened its mouth. The roar that followed did not travel through the air first. It traveled through the ground. My teeth vibrated. My knees wanted to fold. Birds that had been hiding in the canopy dropped from branches, stunned, before the thing's breath took them and scattered them as ash. Sledge runners hissed against soil as the Umbran leaned harder into their escape lines. Children clutched the sides of the frames, eyes bright, not with terror but with something that looked disturbingly like exhilaration. One of the older boys on the nearest sled glanced back at the beast, then at me. He grinned, sharp and feral. "First time?" he called. I almost tripped again. Tareth was ahead of us, feet chewing distance, bow unpacked and strung while he ran. He did not look back at the creature. He did not need to. His ears were tracking it, shoulders adjusting minutely with every impact. Umbran hunters fanned out along the slope. Some had bows, some had spears, some carried nothing that made sense as a weapon at all. A spool of wire. A polished bone disc. A flute. This was not a party composition that made sense in any system I understood. Arrows began to arc back, but not in volleys the way the wall guards had trained. They went one by one, each shot almost lazy. Loose. A breath followed by a release. They were not aimed at the monster's eyes or joints. They cut lines into the air around it, stitching some invisible pattern. "What are they doing?" I shouted. Hexa's voice was tight. "Probing. Marking its stride. They are mapping a threat model by hand. You call them hunters. They are closer to field debuggers." The creature charged down the ridge after us. Entire sections of forest simply ceased to be, reduced to mulch splinters under its weight. When it hit a massive root arch, the root shattered. The resulting debris turned into a short-lived storm around its legs. Beside me, an Umbran woman laughed. It was not mockery. It was edge of joy, the kind that comes from surviving something too many times to stay afraid in the same way. She caught my look and shrugged while she ran, breath easy, legs taking the slope like it was a flat road. "It woke early this cycle," she said. "The young will talk about this one." "Talk about what?" I gasped. "That thing kills you. Sometimes." She flashed teeth. "Sometimes not. Terra Prima is not gentle, newborn. It throws stones to see what breaks." Ahead, the valley floor spread closer. Rivers cut luminous paths through the clay. The sleds angled toward a braided stream that glowed faintly blue where the deeper channels bent. Celery ran at my side now, her staff tucked under one arm as she sprinted. Even in motion, she held herself with a strange ease, as if the ground were agreeing with every step she took. "It will not stop the chase," she advised. "It likes the hunt." "It what?" Hexa snapped, confirming. "The entity's wetware runs a rage-lock protocol. That is stupid and elegant." "Then why shoot at it?" I asked, nodding toward the hunters, who had switched to loosing arrows in short bursts whenever the beast angled too far toward a cluster of sleds. Celery's eyes crinkled. "We must delay it to move far enough away to try and lose it." As if to demonstrate, Tareth skidded to a stop on a ledge above us. He drew 3 arrows in one hand, knocked them in awkward fan formation, and waited. The creature barreled closer. At what looked like the last possible second, he released. The arrows did not sink into flesh. They hit the ground in front of the monster's right foreleg, shattering on impact, releasing puffed clouds of dark dust. The beast's foot landed squarely in the powder. Its whole body shuddered. The luminous veins along its sides flared, then dimmed, a glitch in the rhythm of its movement. It stumbled one step, its head jerking slightly to the left. The effect was tiny compared to its mass. It still came on. But its trajectory changed by degrees, its line of chase shifted away from the sleds and toward a bare stretch of hillside. Deterrence, Celery said. Not strong enough to stop it but strong enough to ask it not to step somewhere. The Umbran laughed again, a ripple through their ranks. One of the younger hunters whooped as the monster's tail clipped a dead tree instead of a sled, sending a cloud of splinters over us. Hexa murmured, entropy very small edits applied to a very large script. They are not tanks or healers. They are more like people who file patches while running. The analogy hit my old gamer brain and sat there, heavy. No healer spam, no aggro management, no designated crowd control. Just a whole village whose class was refused to die in a place built to kill you. A boulder the size of a house crashed down the slope behind us, launched by one of the creature's careless steps. It slammed into the hillside, burst apart, and fragments as sharp as blades hissed past. One shard nicked my cheek. Another punched a hole clean through a sled's wooden frame. The child on that sled screamed, then clamped his mouth shut, looking embarrassed. An elder in front of him turned her head just enough to scold. The boy nodded, gripping the sled harder in pain. "Rootbreaker," he whispered, voice shaking. "Rootbreaker, Rootbreaker, Rootbreaker." The glowing veins along the monster's flanks pulsed again, as if in answer. "Is that its name?" I asked. "Call sign," Celery said. "How often does this happen?" She thought for exactly one stride. "Often." And she laughed with the others. "Terra Prima," I said. "This is all normal for Terra Prima." Hexa considered. "Normal is a strong word. Recurring, yes. Expected, yes. Sanctioned, probably not. The Nexus does not like remembering that it once had to fear its own prototypes." Terath had dropped back to our level, cutting a diagonal path along the slope. Sweat streaked his skin, but his breathing was still controlled. He caught my eye and saw me panting. "If you are going to fall," he said, "do it in the river. The waters will carry your shame with you." I decided not to ask what that meant, though I had a pretty good idea. Ahead, the first sleds hit the braided stream. They did not slow. The runners skimmed the surface, sending up fans of glowing water. The young Umbran on board whooped, leaning into the turn as if this were a festival ride. Hexa hissed. "Do not ingest that water. The radiation profile is almost artistic." "We have to cross that?" I said. "Better water than teeth," Celery replied. Behind us, Rootbreaker screamed again. The sound chased its own echo through the valley, making the air seem to stutter. The creature hurled its massive body down the last stretch of slope, forelimbs punching craters into the red clay, tail whipping through the remainder of the trees. For a moment, it looked like it might simply plow straight through the river, taking sleds and hunters and everything else with it. Then three elders stepped out of the fleeing lines. They were old in a way Terra Prima did not encourage. Skin-lined, hair gone to white, backs straight anyway. Each carried a staff, and each staff was wrapped near the tip with coils of black salt cord. They did not speak. They planted their staffs into the ground at 3 points that formed a triangle between the river and the beast. Arcs of darkness snapped between the staff tips. Not light, not lightning. Absence. The space inside the triangle seemed to invert. For an instant, my brain failed to render what I was seeing. The world bent there, like a glitch in a simulation. Rootbreaker stepped into it. Everything in me expected resistance. Impact. A crash that would shake the valley. Instead, the monster's right foreleg passed through the triangle as if through water. Its massive limb slowed, caught, and then something in its stride miscalculated. The next step landed wrong. Its center of gravity turned traitor. The beast stumbled. That was all. No dramatic fall. No cinematic roll. Just an enormous misstep that took it 3 degrees off balance. But that tiny difference meant that when its claws hit the riverbank, the soil sheared. Clay that had held for us liquefied under the force. The bank gave way. Rootbreaker slid sideways into the braided stream. Water geysered up around it, turned black where it touched. The glow along its veins flared in pain or anger. Its roar turned wordless and wet. The Umbran cheered. Not all at once. In broken shouts, and laughter. Hunters slapped each other's shoulders. Children on the sleds leaned back, watching the enormous body thrash. Celery did not slow. She jerked her chin toward the elders, who were already pulling their staffs free from the torn ground. I do not know what I had expected from Terra Prima. A lush sanctuary. A glitchless backup of a world that had not yet learned how to break itself. Not this. Not a planet that treated kaiju like bad weather. Hexa must have been tracking my thoughts. The Nexus calls Terra Prima a wilderness resource node, she said. This is what that means in practice. We pounded across the stream where the elders indicated, leaping from stone to stone. The water glowed pale blue where it was shallow and sickly violet in the deeper channels. My soles tingled with pins and needles where splashes hit bare skin. On the far side, the ground tilted up again into a series of terraces like giant steps carved into the valley wall. Sleds took the ramps between them. Runners took the rougher lines, cutting switchbacks. I glanced back one last time. Rootbreaker was still in the water, but it was already recovering. It planted all four limbs, massive muscles rolling under scarred hide, and began to drag itself back toward solid ground. The river boiled where its claws dug in. It is not stopping, I said. It never stops, Celery replied. Stopping is not its function. Then how do you kill it? She laughed, breathless and real. We do not. That is not our function. An arrow hissed past my ear. I flinched, but it was not aimed at me. It struck a cluster of hanging seed pods on a twisted tree above us. The pods burst, releasing a cloud of dust that smelled sharp and metallic. The dust drifted down onto the hillside between us and Rootbreaker. Where it settled, the clay hardened, darkening to near black. The next time the monster's claws hit that patch, they did not sink. They skidded. The beast snarled, gouging lines that sparked briefly as if striking stone. Friction edits, Hexa said, impressed despite herself. Somehow they are changing coefficient values on the fly. I watched as another hunter triggered a different plant, releasing a sugary sap that ran down into a narrow trench. When the sap reached the river, it foamed violently, producing a slick that turned one angle of the bank into a trap for any misjudged step. None of it stopped the creature. But every small change made its path worse for chasing us and bought us more ground. You could take a god with us, I said, half to myself. Celery shook her head. We could inconvenience one. For gods, you needed so much more. This is known. Her eyes flicked toward me when she said it. The sleds crested the last terrace and angled toward a cluster of stone outcrops that rose from the valley floor like worn knuckles. Openings gaped in their sides, dark and low to the ground. Dareth signaled with a short, sharp whistle. Sleds peeled off in pairs, vanishing into the mouths of the stone. Hunters followed, ducking inside without breaking stride. I hesitated. The openings looked too small, too low, like something designed for creatures that did not need as much space as we did. Celery read the doubt in my face. Old burrow network, she said. Carved long ago by the things of the wilds, the beast is too large to fit. You are not. What if it collapses? I asked. She looked at me with an odd expression. Then we keep running? Hexa nudged my thoughts. The probability of total collapse is low. The probability of you dying if you stay out here is much higher. I went where the odds pointed. Inside, the air cooled, smelling of mineral and old roots. The tunnel sloped down, then leveled. Sled runners scraped rock in short bursts. Everyone began lighting small, witch lights that swirled around them. The roar of Rootbreaker became muffled, then turned into a distant grind. We did not stop for a long time. The burrow branched repeatedly, and at each fork, an elder or a hunter chose a direction without discussion, following maps etched into memory. Only when the sound of pursuit faded completely did the pace ease. Sled slowed. People began to breathe from their bellies again, not their throats. I leaned against the tunnel wall, feeling my heart finally accept that it was not about to punch through my ribs. That, I said, is normal for you. Celery considered the word. Normal is not the shape of it, she said at last. It is terra prima. She does not change herself to welcome us. We run or she changes and we leave. Dareth slid down with his back to the opposite wall, bow across his knees. He looked at me, eyes crinkling. This is why we laughed, he said. Not because we enjoy being hunted. Because we are still here to run. Hexa sat in my lap without really sitting there, tail curled around phantom paws. Her eyes were wide, pupils very thin, she was only visible to me. They seem to think the system has some drain or changing effect upon them, she said softly. There was a development of this way of thought amongst my kind but they are all gone now. I let my head rest back against the stone and finally, for the first time since the roar woke the valley, let my eyes close. Rootbreaker would climb out over the tunnels. It would find some other path, some other prey, some other hunt. The Umbran would keep their sleds ready. The old planet would keep testing the metal of the Umbran. Somewhere ahead, In the oldest part of this forest and far past this burrow, keys waited in roots, and gods sat on stolen scaffolding. I laughed and felt for the first time that someone could defy this machine. The child of Yin was delighted and took the laugh to a manic edge. Chapter 63, Umbral Days. When the edge of the laugh finally wore off, sleep came in short, broken stretches that smelled of stone and old roots. We stayed in the tunnels for a time. Long enough that my sense of day and night stopped being useful. Long enough that the memory of open sky turned into something soft around the edges. The Umbran did not mind. The world without walls did not mean they never used shelter. It meant they never trusted structures that pretended to be permanent. The burrows were old. They were a convenience, not a claim. It felt strangely nostalgic. Not the kaiju, not the way the earth shook when something like Rootbreaker dragged itself over the roof of the tunnels. That was new and terrible. What felt like a memory was the way the Umbran moved together, the way they argued quietly over meals, the way children slept in untidy piles against their elders. It reminded me of Earth in every direction except the obvious ones. Earth had never required a daily threat model. It had never asked me to sprint for my life as part of a morning routine. But there was something about the Umbran that fit the shape of the people I remembered. They laughed even when they were tired. They traded chores. They made space for each other without asking the system for a notification first. For the first time since waking in the Nexus, I did not feel like I was walking through someone else's game. Hexa perched on my knees, only visible to me. Her tail flicked through my shins with no resistance. "You are staring," she said. "They are normal," I said. She followed my gaze. A pair of hunters were checking sled runners for cracks. Two children carried bundles of dried root along the tunnel, nearly tripping over their own feet. "Normal is a contextual value," Hexa said. "You are in a feral hazard zone on a prototype biosphere. Their mortality curve is steep. They are not normal to either of your standards." "That is not what I meant," I said. "They feel like people. Not classes. Not builds. Just people." Hexa considered that for a moment, ears dipping forward. "I suppose you are right, their free will is somewhat reminiscent of Earth when we were first merged." Dareth dropped down beside us without warning. He joined conversations that way, as if he had always been sitting there and we were late to notice. His bow rested across his lap. His shoulders barely touched the stone. "You are still running wrong," he said. I blinked. "I am sitting." "You are sitting like someone who runs wrong," he said. "Your feet remember what your spine forgets." I squinted at him. "That is not a sentence with meaning." "Yes, it is," he said. "Come." He rose in one smooth movement, spine unwinding, and started down the tunnel. I pushed Hex off my knees. She landed on nothing and did not bother pretending otherwise. "Training arc," she said. "I approve." Inwardly I rolled my eyes and replied in thought, "Didn't we just do that?" I followed Dareth through the burrow network. The air was cool and dry. Witch lights curled along the ceiling in a slow, gentle drift, anchored to grains of black salt. I could hear water somewhere above us, a steady muted rush. The Umbran had carved short, flat stretches into some of the tunnels. They were long enough for a few strides and wide enough for two people to pass without brushing shoulders. It took me a moment to realize that someone had designed these sections for practice or leisure. Hexa decided to tease me with a chiding tone. "Nomadic peoples often return to the same spots over and over. Did you really not learn anything in school? You went twice." I ignored her. Celery waited there with 3 other hunters. She leaned on her staff, not because she needed it but because it looked natural there. The others were younger, maybe my apparent age or a few years older, with the long, dry muscles of people who ran more than they walked. "You brought the newborn," Celery said. "You told me to," Dareth said. She nodded once and turned toward me. "You kept up," she said. "You did not fall and need a ride. That is a good start. Now we teach you how to do it without wasting so much breath." "I did not think I was that bad," I said. One of the younger hunters snorted. He had an arrow face and a scar along his jaw that looked like a bite. "You ran like a wall guard," he said. "Heavy. Straight. All legs, no thinking." "I used to run track," I said, "before I could stop myself." "That is not a word I know," he said. "But if it trained you to pound your heels like that, it was a bad teacher." Celery tapped her staff once on the packed earth. "We do not have time for insults," she said. "We have time for training. You want to survive here, children?" I lifted my hands in surrender. "All right," I said. "Show me how to run like an Umbran." Trying to defuse the situation, trying hard to suppress the hissing and disdainful spitting that roiled under my skin as the child of Yin screamed at the insults. Dareth stepped into the center of the flat stretch. He shrugged off his bow and set it against the wall. The others moved back enough to give him space. He rolled his shoulders once, then stood still. "Watch his feet, petulant child," Celery said, smiling quietly. Dareth began to walk. It looked unremarkable at first. Then I noticed the way his weight transferred. He did not slam his heels or push off hard with his toes. His foot landed almost flat, then rolled, spreading the pressure along the whole length. His knees never locked. His hips stayed loose. He increased his pace until it became a jog, then a run. His head hardly moved. If I blurred my focus, it looked as if he were gliding. "Your problem," Celery said, "is that you fight the ground. You attack it as if it insulted your mother. The ground does not care. It takes, and it gives nothing back when you do that. Watch again." Dareth slowed to a stop. He turned, breathing evenly, not even flushed. "You push down," he said to me, "because you think power comes from force. It does not. It comes from timing. The earth already moves. You learn to fall in the right direction and at the right moment." "That sounds like a thing," I said. Hex's whiskers twitched. "He is correct," she said. "You are drawing a conclusion without acknowledging the frame of reference. The planet rotates. Gravity already pulls. You are wasting energy trying to reinvent down." Dareth did not hear her words, but he seemed to catch the sense of my expression. "Bend your knees," he said. "Not too much. Stand like you are about to sit, but then change your mind." I did as he said. It felt awkward. "Now," he said, "lift one foot. Do not push. Let yourself fall forward until the ground catches you." I tilted forward. My body panicked, tried to throw a leg out. My foot hit the ground too hard. My ankle jarred. I swore. The scarred hunter laughed. "Wall guard," he said again. Celery shot him a look. He subsided, still smiling. "Again," Dareth said. We repeated the motion until my body started to understand that falling did not mean surrendering control. When I let the earth pull and simply directed where my foot landed, the impact felt softer. The next step became easier to find. Hexa padded along beside me, matching my strides in miniature. "You are still wasting plenty of effort," she said. "But I have to say it is less embarrassing." "That helps a lot," I muttered. "It should," she said. "You survived Rootbreaker. You have earned the right to be insulted with accuracy." Once Dareth was satisfied with the basic pattern, he added breath. "You gulp air," he said. "You drink it like someone who is afraid it will vanish. It will not, at least not all at once. Take less, more often. Make your ribs a bellows. Hear it." He demonstrated a rhythm. In for 2 strides. Out for 3. In for 2. Out for 3. The sound of it synced with his feet. "The children learn this before they can walk alone," Celery said. "They play in the tunnels and woods, as such they must learn young to not fall behind." I tried to match Dareth's breathing. At first, I kept losing count. Every time my attention drifted, the old panic pattern returned and I sucked in air too fast. I was suspicious that Hexa could control my breath, but she wanted me to learn. If she caught that thought, she didn't admit it. "If you do that when something is chasing you," the scarred hunter said, "you will drown in your own lungs before anything bites you." "Thank you for your kind support," I said. He grinned. "You're welcome. I am Hera." We ran. It began as slow loops in the practice tunnel. Then Dareth took us into the wider burrows. We jogged past families building or repairing sleds from scavenged rootwood, past elders drawing maps in salt on the floor and arguing quietly about routes. We climbed short slopes and dropped down the other side. Every few minutes, Dareth corrected something. "Lift your knees less often, stride with the rotation. Relax your shoulders. Tension grabs air and slows." Celery added. "Look ahead," Hera called as we ran together. "Not at your feet. Thinking is half the sprint. The danger is almost never under your toes. It is in what you are running toward." I listened. Though Hera's advice was a little generic. Sweat soaked my shirt. My calves burned. My lungs protested. Hexa tracked my vitals in the background, not in words but in a subtle awareness of heart rate and blood oxygen. "Do not collapse," she said when I started to slow. "You are not at the threshold yet. You are at the point where you want to stop because it is uncomfortable. Those are not the same thing." "Easy for you to say," I managed. "I am not the one who made a bargain with an AI implant." That was fair. We ran until my legs shook and the tunnel walls felt closer than they were. When Dareth finally lifted a hand, I nearly stumbled to a halt. "Better," he said. "Not good. But better." Celery passed me a skin of water. It tasted faintly metallic from whatever minerals leached into it, but it was cool. I drank carefully, remembering Hex's warning about gulping. "Why does it matter this much to you?" I asked when I could speak. "You could leave me behind. You told me you do not fight threats you do not understand. I am a threat you do not understand? I'd die out there without you." Celery tilted her head. "You are a newborn," she said. "That is more important than the threat. Newborns are for teaching. If they are worth teaching, they learn. If they are not, they die before they have time to pull too many others into their mistakes." "That is not comforting," I said. "It was not meant to be," she said. "Comfort is for the walls. We do not have walls. We have real lives and free will." Harry leaned his back against the tunnel, sliding down until he sat. "You ask why we train you," he said. "I ask why you stay. You could go back to your walls. They love people like you. They make you numbers and ranks and give you names for your damage." I didn't think that much about leaving since I met Umbran. It was odd. Why was that? "I do not think I fit there anymore," I said after some time. Hexa made a soft sound that might have been an agreement. Dareth picked up his bow. "Good," he said. "Then we will teach you how to move like Umbran who refuses to be counted." The days in the burrows fell into a pattern. We woke, if you could call it waking when you never saw the sun, and shared a simple meal of roasted roots and dried meat. Then there was training. Some mornings it was running. Some, it was learning how to place my feet on different kinds of ground. Dareth scattered sand, gravel, and bits of wood across the tunnel floor and made me cross it at speed without slipping or kicking up sound. "You stomp," he said. "You want the world to know where you are." "That is not intentional," I said. "That is worse," he said. "You waste energy and you broadcast your location. The forest listens. The Nexus listens. Learn to decide when you want to be heard." Other days, they practice turning. "Straight lines get you killed," Celery said. "Everything that is built to chase you is optimized for straight. Dogs. Machines. Nexus-born raiders. The more you move like an arrow, the more you make your back a target." Every lesson came with small pieces of conversation. Not lectures. Fragments slipped between instructions. "You track levels," Hera said one day as he walked me through a stretch of tunnel with low ceiling. "You look at people and think, that one is higher level, that one is lower. You do not even need a system prompt for it. I can see it on your face." "You do not?" I asked. He shrugged. "The system tried, long ago. It gave our lost ancestors numbers, colored our names above our heads. It told us we were getting stronger when the numbers went up. Then we watched raiders with beautiful numbers die to roots they did not understand. We watched walls crack. We watched mana density climb in some worlds until the air caught fire. The Nexus kept counting while it burned. We stopped, we refused the machine of it." Hexa listened to all of it. She rarely interrupted. When she did, it was brief. "They have rejected most of the overlays," she said. "There is still a class and level in a few of them. Mostly they are ghosts in the network. The system does not reward that." The week stretched. I did not know how long a terra prima day truly was, but my body found a rhythm. Run. Rest. Repair sleds. Listen to elders argue about routes. Learn which roots were safe to eat and which used slow poison. Learn to stand when tremors rolled through the earth and to judge whether they were from Rootbreaker or from something less interested in us. The walls of the Nexus above felt like a story I had read a long time ago. On what Hexa tagged as the 7th cycle since our arrival, she pinged the inside of my skull with a sharp, deliberate jolt. "Raid window approaching," she said. I wiped sweat from my forehead. "Raid window? Now?" Around us, the burrow shifted. No one shouted. No one rang a bell. The change in mood moved through the tunnels like a thought. People began to pack. Hearths that had been smoldering were doused. Salt lines on the floor were wiped away. Sleds were checked one final time. Celery appeared at my side. "You keep up now," she said. "We have taught you enough for that." "Where are we going?" I asked. "Away," she said. "Until the raid resolves or forgets us." "Can you outrun portals?" I asked. "Not the portals," she said. "What comes out of them, yes. If we move before they entangle and slow us down." Hexa flicked her tail. "She is simplifying," she said. "There is a range attached to each raid. The farther the raiders move from their entry point, the more the system must spend to keep their connection stable. It scales exponentially. After a certain distance, it is cheaper to let them reset than to pay the cost." "Like a leash," I said. "Old MMOs had that. If you kited a boss too far, it snapped back to its spawn." "Yes," Hexa said. "The same principle. We surfaced into the forest in a different place than before. The canopy here grew lower. The trunks were broader, flaring at the base. The air felt thicker, heavy with the smell of sap and something sharp I could not name. Far off, a new sound cracked through the quiet. It was not Rootbreaker. It was sharper. Brighter. The air popped in that direction, like 100 small storms trying to form at once. "Raid portal, close, very close," Hexa said. The Umbran did not move toward the sound to get a look. They turned away as one, angling across the slope. The sled slid into motion. Hunters took their positions along the flanks. The children did not have to be told to tuck down. "Run," Celery said. We ran. This time, the training held. My feet found the earth in the pattern Tareth had taught me. The ground pulled, and I let it, directing the fall forward instead of fighting it. My breath matched my strides. In for 2. Out for 3. Panic tried to push in from the edges. I noted it and let it go. Hexa tracked the raid signatures behind us. "They are spreading along the river," she said. "They are hunting for whatever the Nexus told them lives here this week." "Does the Nexus warn them about Rootbreaker?" I asked. "It warns them about hazards." Spell light flickered through the trees behind us. I caught a glimpse of something that might have been a human, a figure in bright segmented armor, leaping from root to root and hurling bolts of condensed mana into the undergrowth. The Umbran veered around that area without comment. One arrow arced from Hera's bow and shattered a pod above the raider's path. When it burst, the sap released a cloud of fine mist. The raider stumbled through it, coughing, then vanished from my sight as the forest closed around us. "What did that do?" I asked. "Mark them," Hera said between breaths, smiling. "They smell enticing now." I asked. "You do not join the raids. You do not ask the system for quests." "Why would we?" Celery said. "The system is a god that pays its followers in numbers and empties them out when it is done. We prefer to remain uncounted." The sound of the raid portal grew fainter behind us. Hexa watched the signal strength fall. "At current pace," she said, "we will cross the efficient leash radius within an hour. After that, any raider who follows us will cost the Nexus more than we are worth." "That sounds promising," I said. "It depends," she said. "Sometimes it decides that the data is worth the cost. Sometimes it lets events run longer when anomalies are present." "I am the anomaly," I said. "Yes," she said. "Congratulations. Keep running anyway." We did. By the time Hexa announced that the connection behind us had reached a critical drop, my legs were lead. The forest had shifted around us while we ran. The trunks grew farther apart. The undergrowth thinned. Patches of open ground appeared, bare clay cracked like dry blood. "Raid radius crossed," Hexa said. "The portal is collapsing. Anything left outside will be forcibly returned." The Umbran also must have sensed something. Celery slowed their pace slightly. She did not stop. "We do not trust the system's thresholds," she said. "We run until safety can be found again." "What happens if they keep coming one day?" I asked. "Then we run farther," she said. "Or we die. Those are the only options in a world like this." The pattern repeated. Every week, the raid window opened. Every week, Hexa warned me just before the portal tore, and the Umbran were already moving when the first crack sounded across the valley. They treated the raids like storm forecasts. No one complained. No one blamed the Nexus out loud. It would have been like blaming the weather for being weather. We ran through biomes that should not have existed so close together. One week, we crossed a region where all the trees were dead and hollow, their interiors filled with a fine black dust that swirled if you breathed too hard. Another, we skirted a field of crystal growths that hummed with low, hungry sound. Hexa would nudge me away from some patches, identifying radiation levels that made her voice go very quiet. Through all of it, the training continued. "You land too heavy on the left when you are tired," Tareth said one evening, after a run that had lasted until my vision blurred. "You will twist that knee if you do not correct it." "How can you even see that?" I asked, sprawled on my back in a shallow depression, staring at a ceiling of roots. "Because I have watched you fall 3 times on that side already," he said. "I prefer not to add a 4th. Celery knelt beside us, cleaning a knife with practice strokes. "You run better now," she said. "You listen to the ground. You do not argue with it." "I am still slower than you," I said. "You'll be," she said. "We grew up here. We know where the uneven places are. You are still learning. The important thing is that you keep moving when the world tells you to stop." Hera sat a little apart, carving a new notch into his bow. "You still think about levels sometimes," he said without looking up. "I see your eyes counting when you watch us." I shrugged. "Old habits," I said. "Where I came from, everything was numbers. Health, mana, experience. If you could not see it, It felt like it did not exist. It exists, he said. It just does not belong to you. The Nexus counts you. It decides what you are worth in its economy. The more you chase its numbers, the more you chase the terms of your own harvest. Why have you not left Terra Prima? I asked the group. If the Nexus is a predator, why stay inside its jaws? Celery's expression did not change. Because jaws cannot close on what keeps moving, she said. The worlds behind the walls are worse. We control ourselves here. The second week of the month, the raids changed. Hexa noticed first. Power profile is different, she said as we prepared to move. More resources committed. The Nexus is investing. How can you tell? I asked, tightening the harness on one of the sleds under an elder's direction. The portal is bigger, she said. The mana density required to stabilize it is higher. It is sending something important or foolish? Possibly both. Celery's eyes shifted in her narrow face when I relayed that. We will go farther this time, she said. We do not just circle. Farther where? I asked. Deeper, into the woods of Terra Prima, she said. You have run well enough. We can risk it. The forest greeted us with a low wind as we emerged from the tunnels. The sky above Terra Prima was a pale, washed thing, more a hint of color than a full canvas, as if the Nexus was the only light in the universe. The raid portal flared to life behind us. Hexa flinched inside my head. That is not a standard party, she said. That is a city strike group. What is the difference? I asked. Parties chase loot, she said. Strike groups chase profits. Like us, I said. She did not argue. We ran, not across the valley, but along it, keeping the river at our side. The ground here undulated in long, slow swells. The sleds rode them like waves. My legs settled into the training rhythm before my brain finished registering the change in terrain. Behind us, I heard the distinct crack of a spell detonating against something hard. Shouts followed, in languages Hexa translated in fragments. Commands. Complaints. Someone laughing. They brought observers, she said. Scout classes, or their equivalent. Will they follow us? I asked. Yes, she said. For a while. This is an energy investment. Greet, I said. They can watch from a distance. We kept running. The land shifted under our feet. The trees grew stranger. Their trunks thickened and split, forming lattices that let light through in narrow beams. Their leaves were long and thin, hanging in curtains. The air took on a faint glow, as if someone had diluted starlight and poured it between the branches. Bioluminescence, Hexa murmured in my thoughts, half reverent and half clinical. The power draw behind us is climbing, she said. The Nexus is paying more than it should. This confirms the leash hypothesis. Distance costs. If we keep going, it will have to choose between us and its budget. How far is far enough? I asked, lungs burning, legs numb in a way that felt past ordinary fatigue. I do not know, she said. No one writes those values where intelligences like me can read them. We are finding out the hard way. Celery ran at our front, staff tucked under her arm, eyes fixed ahead. Tarath and Hera bracketed the sleds. Elders counted breath in steady, quiet patterns. The pressure of the raid followed. At first, it felt like weather again, like a storm at our backs. Then it started to thin. The spell impacts grew rarer. The shouts became more distant. Hexa watched the numbers that were not supposed to exist for her. The connection is degrading, she said. Packet loss crossing whatever threshold the Nexus built in. It is starting to hurt. Good, I said again. You are enjoying this, she said. A little, I said. She made a small approving sound. When the pressure finally flickered and snapped, it was almost anticlimactic. One moment, the background hum of raid activity filled my nerves. The next, it was gone, as if someone had shut a door. The portal collapsed, Hexa said. Anything still outside will be forced to resolve. What does that mean here? I asked. It means Terra Prima keeps anything the system cannot pull back quickly enough, she said. Fragments. Weapons. Sometimes people if they are unlucky. Celery slowed. The Umbran eased from a run into a long, rolling jog. They did not stop, but the edge came off their movement. We are past their reach, she said. For this week. You are right, I told Hexa. Leash? Yes, she said. The equations must go exponential at about this distance. That is useful information. For who? I asked. For you, or for the Umbran? She flicked an ear. For anyone. We did not turn back toward the familiar tunnels. Instead, the Umbran angled deeper into the glowing forest. The trees here were willows, or something close enough that my mind supplied the name. Their branches hung in long curtains that brushed our shoulders as we passed. Each leaf held a bead of light near its base, soft and steady, like a field of tiny lanterns. The ground was damp and springy underfoot, covered in low moss that shimmered faintly when disturbed. Bugs filled the air. They were not the gnats and mosquitoes of Earth. These were bigger, slower, each with its own light. Some drifted like little paper lanterns, round bodies pulsing with gentle green. Others moved in zigzags, leaving trails of pale blue afterglow that faded as they passed. Beetles with hard, black shells carried dots of red along their backs that brightened whenever they collided with each other, as if they were exchanging greetings in code. The effect was almost peaceful. "It is beautiful," I said. Celery breathed out slowly. "Yes," she said. "This place is a place of memories." Elders guided the sleds under the densest curtains of branches. The light dimmed there, but it did not vanish. It turned soft and close, like the inside of a shaded lamp. "We will rest here," Celery said. "The raids will not come again for some time." Tarath unhitched a sled, his hands working with practiced ease. Hera set salt lines around the open side of their chosen hollow, his fingers moving quickly as he scattered the black rains. I sank down against one of the trunks. The bark was cool against my back. When I laid my hand flat, I felt a quiet vibration under the surface. Fireflies, or their cousins, drifted overhead. One landed on my knee. Up close, its body was a delicate lattice of chitin and light, wires of luminescence running along its sides in a pattern that almost looked like script. "Do you miss Earth?" "The old life we had," I asked quietly. "I mean the idea of it. A place where running was a choice, not a survival skill." "You were not safe there either," she said. "You just did not notice the teeth. They were slower. More polite. They wore names like Corporation and Climate and Accident. But I do miss the Navi youth of humanity and my peers." The Umbrans settled into their version of stillness. Some repaired harnesses. Some cleaned weapons. Children chased glowing bugs in slow arcs, laughing as they tried to cup the light in their hands without hurting the creatures. No one checked a level. No one compared experience totals. For the first time since I woke up in the Nexus, the absence of that talk felt like a presence of something else. "You see it now," Hexa said. "See what?" I asked. "They do not care about the system's reasons for existing," she said. "It was built to optimize throughput, population, mana density, power levels and keep everything chugging along forever. The Umbran have rejected all of that. I doubt there are many populations like them left. These are old ideas now." I watched a little girl help her younger brother climb into a hollow between two roots. She checked the sled harness twice before she let him sleep. "It feels more real," I said. Hexa was quiet for a beat. "It is harder to measure," she said. "That makes it hard to optimize.